Everybody, good evening. Good evening from Vienna and welcome to today's roundtable discussion on Russian independent student organizations. My name is Friedrich Kain. I'm a postdoc researcher at the Faculty Center for Interdisciplinary Historical and Cultural Studies at the University of Vienna. And it is an honor for me and much more a pleasure to open our session also in the name of Dietlind Hüchtger, with whom I'm working here at the Faculty Center, and Jan Surman from the Masaryk Institute and Archives of the Czech Academy of Science. In this meeting, we want to inform and raise awareness about the everyday work of independent student organizations in Russian academia. Much has been said about the struggle for students' participation in academic organization lately. The recent restrictions which the Moscow Independent Students Journal DOXA has faced are no exception, but more of an occasion to take a step back and not only look at the struggles, but as severe as they are, but much more at the texts and discussions and all the action behind that. So see what people are actually doing. Before I hand over to Jan Surman, who will moderate the discussion, let me briefly mention our cooperating partners here at the University of Vienna who helped us put this together. They are the research platform Transformations and Eastern Europe, the Research Center for the History of Transformations, or in short, that's it. The Department of East European History, and the ERC project Anti-Autonomy, Non-Territorial Autonomy. And now, that's it from my side for now. I'll hand over to Jan Surman and wish us all an interesting discussion.
Thank you, Friedrich. Thank you, Friedrich and Dietlind, for coming up with the idea to organize this discussion and to setting it up. My name is Jan Surman and I will be chairing today's discussion. I'm a historian currently at Masaryk Institute and Archives of the Czech Academy of Science. Before this, I was at the Higher School of Economics. This is why I also know some of the colleagues who will be joining us here. And I'm very happy that we will have today, so you should be seeing already our poster, which we used. And I'm very happy that we'll be having today representatives from 4 institutions. I'm not even sure whether we can call them institutions, from 4 student organizations. From student journal DOXA, we will have Mstislav Kybachev. From Initiativna Grupa MGU, initiative group of the Moscow State University, we'll have Vitaly Dmitry Tolkachev from the Higher School of Equality from Moscow, an organization which is dormant at the moment, as far as I know, but was very active for several years. And we also will have Marina Besmaternich from Student Media Vetter from Kazan. Every speaker got the same set of questions, which will be basically them saying about the institution they are representing, or the organization they are representing, about the context with the administration and the university, and about the aims, and about the, why do the academia need, or what do the academia or universities need the organizations they represent. And we will hear exactly 4 sets of answers, and then we'll have a general discussion about it. And I'm really looking forward. I ask also my colleagues to say a few more general words, so that the discussion and the presentations are also understandable for people who are not in Russia and don't know specificities of the Russian academia, which is in a way very different than the European one. For example, the autonomy of university is not really very existent. For example, territorial academy, which also plays a very important role then in a way how we act within the universities then. And it also is a good background for then the further questions. And I wanted to start before giving the floor to Mstislav. I actually wanted to start with saying a bit about the photo which we used for our announcements on Facebook, and not only, the announcement you see in front of you, and the original photo looks like this. And it's a photo from a student protest which happened, I think, in September. I'm not really sure the exact date, but I think it was in September in a new building of the Higher School of Economics at Pokrovka. And 4 students put on the banner on which it is written "No to political expulsions," which is a protest against several professors or scholars being released from Higher School of Economics for political reasons or not political reasons, that is unclear. And I'm one of the people who was expelled for political reasons or not political reasons, or not expelled at all because simply my contract was not renewed. In any way, the administration decided, in my case and in around 20 other cases, not to prolong contracts with scholars who are politically active, and students decided to demonstrate against it, which is a very brave move, because should the students be uncovered and should we know their identities, they would be very likely expelled from the university. And Natasha Tyszkiewicz, who is one of 4 editors of DOXA, student journal DOXA, made also an interview with this 4 students, which unfortunately is available only in Russian. But what I wanted to say with this is that it's also a very important statement, because it's one of the few statements in which students also protested together with university professors, which was a communication between students and professors is a big problem at Russian universities, and one of the functions of this independent student organizations is to bridge this miscommunication. And this is, for example, something which I see very clearly from my point of view as a lecturer at the Higher School of Economics, that I see this, for example, as a very important function. But this is basically from my side. And now I wanted to give the floor for our 4 speakers, starting with Mstislav, who will be representing DOXA. And DOXA is also very important because one of the very immediate reasons why when we decided to have this event is that 4 editors of DOXA are now until more or less a house arrest for a video which was set by the Следственный комитет of the Russian Federation as a call for minors to participate in dangerous activities, and the prosecution is ongoing since more or less 1 month. They are in the house arrest, and well, we will also see very soon what will happen. But DOXA is still very well alive and very active, and Mstislav will also say something about it. So Mstislav, please, the floor is yours now.
Yes, thanks, Jan. Yeah, so once again, my name is Mstislav Gurachev. I'm an editor at DOXA Journal. And I've been an editor there for more than 2.5 years as of right now. So yeah, DOXA was founded back in 2017 as a student organization inside Higher School of Economics, one of the leading universities in Russia, mostly concerning social and humanitarian sciences. So yeah, and throughout this journey, and there was a long journey, DOXA grew into the, I could say, the largest student media in the country. Yeah, so right now DOXA is made by students, but also for students, but not just students, but also teachers, because we cover the problems of, for example, the firings in Higher School of Economics in 2020. We had a big text about this, but also we do know that we're aware that several employees of several prominent Russian universities do read our texts, and well, we can't say for sure, but we hope that maybe they adjust the hypothesis according to what they read. Yeah, so just to maybe I'll just read a couple of headlines just to get this straight. I think I'm a bit biased towards the normative journalism, and DOXA is not just about journalism. And it's pure science, but yeah, that I'll just go forward with it. So back in 2018, we've published a text, an investigation, in fact, with headlining that basically covering that one of the most prominent professors in Faculty of Economics in High School of Economics harassed one of his students. And this material was quite scandalous. I wouldn't say it was scandalous, but it's a cause to a scandal. But unfortunately, the commission in the university that was called to investigate this case, well, they concluded that nothing wrong had it indeed happened. Then let's in January 2021, we've published a big text I've mentioned before, how and why our High School of Economics is passing grades with its leading teachers. So basically, since 2009 actually, and maybe 2012, my university, and I'm also a student of High School of Economics as of right now, was, I wouldn't say firing, because there is no firing in a pure sense, but just the contracts, they weren't renounced for several reasons, and these reasons would suggest that there is a trend line, that maybe a teacher is participating in some kind of protest activities, or maybe his or her academic work is kind of associated with the protest. And then a year or so later, we see her departure from the university. Then also, like on the next day after the raids this year in April 2021, we've published on us a paper with Project on that media, one of the most prominent investigative journalism outlets in Russia. And we've concluded that a overwhelming majority of heads and rectors of Russian universities, they turned out to be associated with authorities and the ruling party, United Russia. Yeah, and I think the last headline for today, but I think not last, but last my speech, I hope that there was a study back in 2019, how officials, state officials, send their children to study at prestigious universities without competition, using the scheme of целевой набор, or selective set. I'm not sure how to translate it correctly, but basically a scheme to allow people and children from not affluent families to get into the best universities in the country. So yeah, and I think for the last several years, DOXA has evolved in a big way. Like I remember myself being at the meeting in the Library of Foreign Literature in the Moscow City Center back in 2018. There were about 7 of us, and we were discussing like how do we get this material going? How do we get basically how do we stabilize on getting our materials right? Because we have to be media, And then right now there's more than 25 members in the editorial board. So yeah, it's been a long way. And yes, I think the major reason, one of the major reasons why we talk about this today is that back in 14th of April, the apartments and the DOXA office was raided by the police. And if I'm not mistaken, in a week or so, there would be a trial considering our friends and 4 DOXA editors, because they are accused in let's say, calling minors into protest, whatever that is. Yeah, and I think the last thing I would like to mention is that while we were starting as the organization in Harvard School of Economics in late 2019, after the Moscow protests, the university decided to expel DOXA from the list of its organization, accusing the outlet in destroying the reputation of the university. Let's put it this way. Yeah, and right after this, the university also expelled every single media from the list of its organizations. So not just us, but many major media, even non-political in any sense and non-protest, such as, for example, Television, which was quite dependent on the university's abilities to provide, technical abilities such as cameras and stuff and so on. They were also expelled. So this would suggest like a grand scheme, a grand shift in the politics and a grand shift in the policy, first of all, of the administration of High School of Economics. And that said, we're not just focusing on our ex-parental universities, and we have a lot of, and we're really proud of that actually, because it's quite tough to go beyond, not just beyond our parent universities, but also beyond Moscow and two big capitals in the country. And we're quite proud that we are covering problems of basically any university in Russia as of right now. So yeah, and I think my speech was quite confusing in a sense, but I would be glad to ask any questions if there are any. And right now, I think I'll give the floor back to Jan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yaslav. I think, and I would suggest that we have a question round after everyone speaks, because I suppose that otherwise we would start with DOXA and then have 20 questions, and we will be, sitting much longer. And thank you for a talk. And now I would switch from Higher School of Economics, or previously Higher School of Economics, to MGU or MSU, Moscow State University, and ask Vitaly to say a few words about the initiative group at the Moscow State University.
Thanks, Jan. My name is Vitaly Zemlyansky, and here I'm representing initiative group of MSU. I was active participant of this organization between 2014 and 2019. The initiative group of MSU firstly was organized in very different conditions than DOXA in Higher School of Economics. To better understand it, I will tell a couple of words about our institution. MSU is the oldest university of Russia, one of the biggest and very traditional. It still keeps the structure of old Soviet institution with different faculties which elect their deans, but the rector, the chief of the university, is not elected anymore. Just 2 universities in Russia have their rectors who are directly promoted by president of the country. It's Moscow State University and St. Petersburg University. So in these conditions, initiative group firstly appeared in the very end of zeros in 2009 after the massive tragic fire in the dormitories of the university. And after this fire, it became clear that official student organizations, and Moscow State University has 3 main official student organizations. Students' Union, which is not independent at all. Also Studcom, which is the organization representing the students living in dormitories. And Studsoyuz, which is kind of a more Komsomol or pioneer organization, which helps a rector to organize different events. So just after this fire, a lot of questions to rector and administration of the university started from the student side, and none of this organization could not reach rector with a message of students. So students who lived there organized independently, and they started a campaign to keep the rules of the dormitories more or less the same as they were before the fire, because administration used this case as kind of a shock therapy to promote the restrictive reforms as to tighten the control under the dormitory, to restrict the right of students to come into their friends, and so on. So it was the context when initiative group of MSU was started. And after that, so this organization never was kind of semi-official and never had any support from the rector's side, and it was more or less underground. It was in later years, it's or closer to our times, it started to react on different case of a violation of student rights, for example. Then just the newest case, then Olga Misik, who is the student of journalism in our university, faced a trial for her activism. The initiative group of MSU started the initiative to support her financially and by other means. And also the organization dealt with several issues regarding the area which was close to university. The university is quite huge and the campus is quite huge, and a couple of years before the fan zone of the World Championship, FIFA was built near the university, and that brought a lot of problems to the students who lived there, and the result of the student campaign was that the fan zone was shifted a little bit further from the main building of the university. But on the opposite side, students who started the campaign faced quite hard pressure from the local police administration and security services. Even, for example, accounts in Telegram of some students were hacked, and their data was published in Vkontakte social media, and also parents of one student was called by security service. So the activism there is also kind of sometimes could be dangerous for the organizers. Now, in the situation of growing political pressure and repressions, the main issues initiative group of MSU deal with is the repression against students and PhDs like Azat Miftakhov, who is a PhD of a math faculty of MSU, and also anarchist who was jailed for several years for the broken window in United Russia office. And also Olga Misik, which I mentioned before, and 3 or 4 years ago, initiative group of MSU successfully launched and finished the campaign of support of Dmitry Bagatov, programmist and member of MSU community, who faced a trial because of Navalny's protests. So as we can see, a lot of different issues are in the focus of the independent student organization, and I think it's a direct result of the lack of proper representation, which is still the very reality of any student, any university in Russia. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Vitaly, and I think you gave us several ideas for the further discussion. I also wrote down the question of Studsoyuz and the relation between Studsoyuz, the university, and students. So we'll certainly come back to it a bit later. And now I would propose that we go back to Higher School of Economics, and I will ask Dmitry Tolkachev to say a few words about the project of Higher School of Equality. So Dmitry, please.
Hi, thank you. So High School of Equality as student organization is dead now. I closed it officially last year, probably, just because of formal bureaucratic reasons. So we started our activity in 2017. It was a formal official student organization of High School of Economics, and we had a lot of lectures, seminars about sexual health, about sexuality, about gender equality. And it's really interesting where we started, because a few years before, in main Moscow universities, closed gay groups appeared. So in Moscow State University, in Moscow State Institute of International Relations, in Moscow Institutes of Physics and Technology. So, and of course, in High School of Economics. So there were small groups of gays and lesbians who just had a free time and wanted to spend it together. So, and I thought that it should be more open group and not limited to recreational purposes. So I founded Michel Foucault Cinema Club at High School of Economics. So we had some evenings for and watch some films which link to, of course, homosexuality. And after that, a few years later, there were two other groups: Gender Reading Seminar, where people joined it to read gender classics and discuss it, and Sex in HPS.CESEE, where psychologists held lectures about sexual health and so had these lectures. And with these girls from Sex and in HPS.CESEE and Gender Seminar, we united and created a High School of Equality. So we faced huge backlash from students of HPS.CESEE with alt-right's views. They wrote to me and to my colleagues that they will kill us when they will be at our events. One of our co-founder had some threats like we will burn you and then we'll fuck you. So in this consequence. So and after that, of course, it somehow led to decline of our activity, because a lot of people just was afraid to join us, and somehow the activity of this alt-rights split the community. The closeted guys from closeted communities started to think that we as open organization could be a threat for their closetedness. So, and after a few years of work, we decided that we have no more force to do something. But I think that the main idea that it was success. This is ethical regulation inside higher school of economics, because few years ago, or maybe a year ago, so the ethical code, new ethical code of HEC prohibited actions like sextortion, like homophobia in at university. So I think that it's the main impact of our discussions, and we somehow changed attitudes about sexuality and gender inside the university. So I think that that's all from my side.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Dimitri. Now, so I'm putting into our group Marina Besmaternich from Kazan, although I'm at this moment not very sure whether she can speak. Hi, Marina.
Yes, I'm available.
Okay, perfect. Then now it would be your turn to say us about Veter.
Okay, I hope that you hear me well, because I'm in the street. But yeah, I represent the student journal from Kazan that is called Veter. Veter could be translated in English as the wind. And so we are basically the team journalists who make journalism. The purpose of our organization is to get people informed about something that we believe they should know. We report the news, so what's happening right now. The news is related to studentship, like the Academy of Kazan. We do investigations in academia field. Basically, that's all. We are situated in Kazan. If you don't know, Kazan is has 1,300,000 people, and it is called the third capital of Russia, but it is called mostly by like Kazan citizens themselves. So I don't know if that's true, but the point is, it is a big city. But from my point of view, the universities here have too many problems to really perform well. I'm sorry, I can't control it. So many students come to Kazan. Do you hear me right now?
Yes,
yeah?
it works.
Okay. So many students come to Kazan, but they choose not the universities, but the comfortable city with good infrastructure and so on. But the universities have a lot of problems, like the papers that being published in garbage journals. The garbage journals means that they don't really evaluate the papers properly. But if you publish the paper in this journal, you get a degree. So that's one problem that we had an investigation like a month ago, or maybe so. It's one of the last ones. Yeah, like lack of places in dormitories. We also covered that topics and a lot of things that students just tell us. We of course verify it. Check all the facts that they tell us, but yeah, we have like a lot of sources from students and from professors, from administration. We discussed earlier if we feel our team of our journal feel the pressure from our university. The first thing is that we are independent, so we've never been in the university. They didn't pay us. They didn't gave us anything, and we launched a year and a half ago as an independent project. And we don't really have the pressure that that DOXA has. For example, in Moscow, yes, I got the calls from our director that whose job is to organize some festivals and do pedagogical work, not really related to the education. We have these people in every institute and university. And before the rally, the meeting on April 21st, I got a call from him asking me if I will come to the rally, and several of my colleagues also have been called by their directors, but that's all. I think there were no threats of being expelled or something. So comparing to DOXA, it's really nothing. But of course, it's not normal to get calls like that. So yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you, Marina. Yeah, I think that's also all we covered in our pre-interview. So basically now we also have, so we are now moving from the presentations to the Q&A round. So everybody who has a question can raise a hand or write a Q or a question mark in the chat, and then I will let you in and you will be able to ask the question in person. Or you can also use the Q&A button, which is also in the Zoom, in the webinar. If there are no questions yet from the public, then I would ask actually exactly about the question of Studsoviet. So this would be the question, I think, to Vitaly or to Mstislav, but also to Dmitry, because basically in Russia there are Studsoviets which should be doing the work on the communication with students, or like uncovering not good things that happen at the university, and so on and so on. And they are still active. They do some stuff. So maybe you could say a bit more about Studsoviets and how you also see the relation between what you do and what the Studsoviets do.
I can start. As I mentioned before, in Moscow State University, in the very end of zeros, there were 3 non-independent student organizations: Union, Studsoyuz, and Studcom. But now Studsovet, which is Student Council in Russian, is the 4th student organization, which is not fully controlled by the administration, because the representatives of Studsovet are normally elected by students of the university. But it's also not very independent, because it has no any specific rights and any obligations, just to promote student interests. And it firstly was founded founded in all the Russian institutions in 2011, I suppose, when the lack of representation became very clear and a lot of small independent organizations like Initiative Group started to organize in different universities. So now Student is something in between the independent student organizations and fully controlled by administration. A lot of Studsoviets in MSU, for example, are fully controlled by administration of their faculties. But I was very surprised to see that then the case of DOXA started this year. A lot of Studsoviets in MSU spoke solidarity with DOXA, and I think it's could be their sign of change, and the attitudes of students started to change slowly, because when I was a student in the university, the very majority of students just did not care about wider political contexts. So the activists who had good ties with administration were elected without any problems, and independent student activists very often were ignored. But now it seems it starts to change slowly, very slowly, but I think it's the result of wider politicization in Russia. And I think the situation in Higher School of Economics is slightly different, and Studsoviets there have more rights and maybe represent students better, but maybe Mstislav will tell about it in more details.
Yeah, and in High School Economics, you mean, right? Yeah, so I think the student union or Studsoviets in High School of Economics is quite a remarkable creature, I think, because like in many ways, I think it works, and in many ways it doesn't. So, for example, when it comes to some kind of publicity, if there is, for example, when DOXA was expelled from the student organizations in High School of Economics, or maybe if there is a major revamp in official papers and regulations coming up in the university, such as like if we want, if the union administration wants to change the formula of assessment, which means like the major revamp and major disturbance and grand shift of scheme of things in the uni. And then the student union is actually, I think, quite effective in sometimes, maybe sometimes cherry picking, but still a lot of times they took the student side and they focused their attention that like we're deeply concerned at the student union that this or this is happening. But still, when it comes to real influence, students union is, I think, its capabilities are quite limited, which was sad, I think, and which was underlined by one of the higher officials at the uni, who, like on one of the panel discussions back in 2019, one of the pro-rectors, I'm not sure if there is a, like, if this position is in Western universities, but still, he said that like the university is actually for professors, and this are professors and the employees who make the rules, and the students are the ones who should oblige to the rules. So this pretty much thumbs it up for the student unions in High School of Economics. But from my perspective, like when it comes to little things, when it comes, not so little, but when it comes to bureaucracy, when it comes to some procedures, when it comes to some kind of minor things that could be improved, that then in such situations, the local student unions in the faculties, local student unions in, for example, in the dormitories, I'm not sure if they're effective, but they are, I think they're achieving more than the grand and the main student union. Yeah, and I'd also say that this wasn't the case several years ago. So back in 2018, back in 2019, I'd say that students' union in my uni was more prominent and was regarded more effective than it is right now. So I think for the last 2 years, like the number of the quotation number or the number of sightings of student union as it is has been really low, and it was on a steady, declining. And I think the vast majority of students in RC would say that they don't really care what student union does, and whether they would actually question whether it does something. So yeah, I think that's my vision.
Great, thank you. Dmitry, Marina, do you want to add something to the question about scrutinised?
Yes, I actually want to talk about Kazan because here student unions are in no power. The only function of these unions is to organize events, not political ones. Maybe some, I don't know, like conferences or Studvesna. We have this large festival where students dance, sing, perform some pieces of theatrical pieces, but that's it. And in Kazan, I don't know any student union that protect the rights of students. We have them, but they actually just something really not real at all. They called students union. They called like even like trade union or something, профсоюз, but they are connected to the administration. For example, in my university, Kazan Federal University, it's the biggest university in Republic. The профсоюз, student union, is the head of the student union works in the university, talking about how they could be independent in any topic. So I feel that in Moscow, in maybe St. Petersburg, student unions is a thing for many universities, and they do a little maybe, but something they do something. They supported DOXA. In Kazan, no one supported DOXA. We have even the Union of Student Media, and we had the discussion about whether we should support DOXA, just to announce that we are we don't agree with this, with what's happening. And the decision was made that we shouldn't talk. We had a poll in Telegram, and 5 student media was wanted to talk, wanted to announce something, but 35, I think, of others they didn't want. They were afraid because they even told us so. We are in the university. We are connected to the administration, so we just couldn't. So there is no. It is not even a question for student unions and some student organizations whether we should support DOXA, whether we should raise some political questions. So youth politics of Tatarstan makes everything to keep students from real politics. Do the Studiousny festivals, do the science, do the something, but not politics. When it comes to politics, it's just no. So it's really differs from Moscow situation.
Thank you, Marina. Dmitry, do you want to finish the round?
So I've never worked with student council. We just met once or twice when we discussed complaints about our organization from alt-rights, and then we discussed directly with administration all the problems and calls from Ministry of Education, for example. So I have not so much experience with the student councils, but I think that inside the university, if there are some examples with student rights when some of representative of this council really help with problems. So.
Thank you. And now we have the question from Wolfgang Müller. Who can now unmute himself and then ask the question? You are already in the main group. So Wolfgang Müller, if you want, you can ask the question. You are now visible and audible.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks for these very interesting and great presentations. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you before, Jan, so sorry for the delay in reacting. When I listened to your presentations, I was wondering how you would assess the current dynamics that are there in Russia among student communities. What we see from the outside is that there is now a plethora of different dynamics going on. We have well, growing pressure from the state and from state power. We have had the problem and the scandal over Navalny, with culminating with his return and imprisonment, then the closing down of DOXA and increased pressure on students. And I was asking myself already many times, how do these dynamics interact, and what is your assessment? What are the dynamics that students and that you are interested in? Is this mainly student politics? Is this mainly the groups that you are representing, be it something about cultural activities, being something about political activities, about sexually defined groups or whatever? Or is it rather a larger dynamic that you would place what you are doing into? I understand this is a very complicated question about something that perhaps people in 10 years will be able to better assess, but I would be very much interested in what your current take is. How would you describe the dynamics and how these different tendencies are interacting? Thank you very much.
Would try to start this I think, to answer, and then I will give the floor to my colleagues. Yeah, so if no one is against it, I hope. Okay, then I think that looking at the months of April as of 2021, even like many speakers and prominent public figures in Russian Facebook community have said that this month was quite outrageous, even by the Russian standards, in what it did to the Russian, let's say, civic society and to Russian independent politics. One of the most prominent journalists in Russia, Mr. Ilya Azar, has just he did a post just listing all of the headlines concerning the arrests and raids and etc. that happened in the month of April. And unfortunately, when it's the month of June, outside the window, and I wouldn't say that much has changed. So we live in a new normality now. Considering the rates on DOXA and the grand scheme of things in the Russian state, I don't think I have the expertise to talk about it. But if you ask for our assessment, then I think that speaking on behalf speaking about DOXA, not on behalf of DOXA, because we have different views on that. But most of us think that the rates concerning the medieval, the parts of the FBK case, or FBK, which is the organization led by Mr. Navalny, because everything that even has a minor detail to do with this organization, which is now considered to be extremist in Russia, that really receives attention from the state officials and from the police. And unfortunately, with this case at its beginning, and we do see it this way right now, I think we are DOXA was part of the FBK case. But in a grand scheme of things, this is just another example of the autocracy of government losing its legitimacy and losing its trust and losing its ratings, and the United Russia's ratings, the ruling party, are on all-time low, as well as the presidents, especially in Moscow and St. Petersburg. And so when this happens, then the regime is leaving its old methods and trying to use, let's say, more less exquisite, I'd say, instrumentaries, and try to do what it does. So I think we've seen this in many. I think we've seen this in socialist republics back in 1980s and 1990s. We've seen this many times before. So that is what it is.
Thank you, Mstislav. Dmitry, Vitaly, Marina, do you want to add?
Yeah, if we, as I understood, this is a question of how I assess the situation and how it affects my work. I don't have the expertise on political situation in Russia. Actually, I watch a lot of YouTube, but it's not, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a scholar to really discuss it, but how it is affected, how it affected my work. We deleted, I think, a lot of news that we published where we mentioned BK, the organization led by Navalny, because it's like it's not happened yet, but it's dangerous to publish some like logos and without mentioning that it is an extremist like organization. And we also changed the news or deleted the news where the source was Medusa, because we couldn't add that this is like an agent, the agent of other countries. Like, I don't know.
Foreign agent.
Yeah, foreign agent. But I believe that that's all. So we just continue working, because if we don't, it will be worse. So we try to do our thing to, I don't know, we just, we have to do it. And we want to do it while we can. So yeah, I think that's all.
Thank you. Vitaly, Dimitri, do you want to add?
As I understood the question was about how the student activism is connected with wider political context, more or less, isn't it?
Perhaps if I may clarify a bit, what I would be very much interested in is to hear from you how you and your student colleagues feel motivated in your activities. Is this something that drives you in your activities that's related rather to university context? Is it that you want to improve the situation of students in particular, or is it motivated rather by something that is happening right now outside of your universities, that at least from looking at Russian media, looking at Western media, we or I perceive as a general dynamic? So this is what I would be very much interested in. And so, Marina, that's not about the social science assessment, but rather your very personal experience and motivation, and that you hear on a daily basis from your colleagues saying we have to struggle for better conditions and for freedom and liberty at universities? Or is it something that you want to express solidarity with FBK or with other colleagues who have been repressed after some demonstrations? That it's your personal motivation in being active that I would be very much interested in.
I think it's quite hard to separate two different kinds of motivation you mentioned. In my personal experience, I firstly started student activism after the injustice in universities' distribution of support for poor students. In my faculty, the administration of the university gave the right to distribute this support to members of official student organization who gave all this money to their friends and to themselves. And it was kind of a very strong motivation at the very beginning that I realized that the university system is quite unjust very often. But I know a lot of people who started their their activism after some wider Russian political events, after the Navalny's investigation, for example. So I think it's the both motivations are very true and real for many students. And some students who start their activism from a very narrow, very exact situation, like me, for example, in the process of engagement, they start to realize that it's part of wider picture. So I think it's something like an answer.
So thank you, Vitaly. And now I will give to Dimitri because he wanted to react already before, and then I will get back to Marina once more. So Dimitri, now, please.
So when we had our lectures or some educational events, we didn't think about politics actually. We thought about education on gender and sexuality topics. And of course, Russian authorities somehow made it political by, for example, prohibiting gay propaganda or something like that. And we always had some thoughts that it could be prosecuted by the law, for example. So I think that if you think about future future steps of the authorities and trying to prevent them, you can feel free to work in your field. And somehow it's funny, and for me it was funny to do something because you wait for next step from administration, from haters, and you live for these next steps actually, and for understanding how long you can do what you want to do and what else you can do. And of course, when you face some limits and face some restrictions, you think that it could be the last event, for example, for your organization. So this is adrenaline actually, and somehow it helped to work with in the context of the regime.
Thank you, Dimitri. And I wanted to come back to Marina, because Wolfgang asked them directly for the clarification of your motivation. And want to say something?
My personal motivation is complex, but I want to start with the thing: we are not activists, like we're journalists, and I believe that you shouldn't be an activist if you're a journalist, because you get involved and you're biased and so on. So I personally am a journalist, and this is the best job that I ever had, and I just love journalism and the principles of journalism, that people should be informed about the problems, about what's happening in their cities and so on. So my motivation is to build a career, is to some personal ones, but of course I believe that without journalism in Russia, even some really small scale journalism, because we are really local media, and we have not really a lot of subscribers and readers related in comparison to I don't know any other federal media that is not about students, but it's an important thing to do, just for people to know. But I should say that not everyone at our team have the same motivation, because students aren't really, not all students know what they want to do. Not all students know what are sure that they want to be a journalist. So we have people, my colleagues, who are not active, who may be good activists, who may do some big things, but since we don't have any organizations, and not all of them have some skills to build one from scratch, maybe they want to do their activism in our journal. So yeah, and the main motivation of I already mentioned that if we don't do something, it will get worse sooner. So we probably should working from fear, love, and a lot of emotions that our situation bringing. But yeah, I think we just, I feel that we just have to do our little things to bring local communities together, to bring students together, and we like do, I think, this thing.
Thank you. And I think it also like more or less directly leads us to the second question, which is by Victoria Harms. And the question is, why should people who are not directly affected and thus will also not directly benefit if your situation miraculously improves? So what should they understand about your situation? Or to put it more bluntly, why should they care? In how far does the repression and pressure you have encountered mattered with regards to Russia at large, / politics, and the society in general?
Well, I could give it a go, I think.
Okay. No.
It's an interesting way to put it, because yeah, but I think it's not really clear. Like I wouldn't say I know why people in developed countries with developed democracies and GDP per capita more than 30,000 USD. I should care, but I think, well, I think first reasons are, you know, general. I think some kind of humanistic human beings and humanistic solidarity, because right now my friends of mine are their freedom is quite limited, and they basically they can't leave their houses in any day, an exception of 2 hours in early morning, which is basically nothing. But then also looking at the examples of the EU countries such as Poland or Hungary, we could see from the example of Russia what are the signals and what are the things that we should care about to prevent any society and any population of any state and citizens of any state not to go this way or rather choose another. So I think that even in the affluent Western world countries, these situations could happen, not on this scale like in DOXA case, to my taste, but we've seen major problems regarding students and academia in the UK for the last several years. We've seen we've seen other things happening in the United States and in the EU, and I think that of course the scale might look a bit wider in Russian Federation, but still I think that all these things, they regard the basic rights, whether it is right to be paid, such as in and paid justly, such as in the UK, or whether it is a right to know the truth, such as in Russia. I think these are questions of justice that we should care about. And unfortunately, my country right now provides one of the widest landscapes and scenarios what are these questions could be. So yeah, I think that might be.
So Dmitry, Vitaly, Marina, do you want to add to this?
I don't know, just maybe one phrase that we should do politics, like all of us, because if you don't care about politics, politics cares about you. So it's just a rational thing to, I don't know, be informed, to be aware of the danger that is existing in our country. So this is an illusion if you think that it won't be a problem for you. So maybe it's for some strange people. No, I think that you are in danger, like every one of us. So of course you should care.
Thank you. And I saw Dmitry who unmuted himself. So Dmitry, please.
So why should they care? They actually shouldn't. If some people don't care, so let them do it. And the second part of a question about repressions. So it somehow depends on context, and we will see the new step of repression, I think, after elections in September. Or maybe vice versa, so authorities relax themselves. So, and we can see more freedoms after that, and somehow feel better. So, and I think that one of the problem with my organization, for example, it's a fear of some people from administration at university that it somehow can harm them and could lead to repression. So because if you are not loyal to the regime, so the regime will defeat you. And I think that they live with this fear in everyday basis. So somehow if they do not support you, it's probably okay if they silent. But if they will understood you as a threat, so it's not a problem for them to deal with it.
Thank you, Dmitry. Vitaly, do you want to react to this question? So if not, okay, yeah. Yeah, then we have a question in Q&A from Nicholas. I teach at a university in Moscow. What can or should I do, both with my students and in Moscow in general, to help student journalism? And now I would ask Vitaly to say the first words on it.
I think the most important and not so hard thing to do is to tell more to international community about what happens in Russia. I read time to time European and American media, and very often I see that the narratives about the situation in Russia is very simplistic. And for other countries, for Latin America, for India, for Africa, for almost all the world, they have quite a good articles. But about the Russia, it's so simplistic, it seems. Sure, I have a Russian perspective, no, not Latin American. But I think it's the situation which we have now is the direct result of the absence of a strong connection between Russian academia and Western academia for all the Soviet period. And that's the thing we should build and we should restore. And I think it's very important to have much more connections between international academia and Russian academia. And in cases of political repressions, it also should work, because few of Russian institutions like High School of Economics and Moscow State University cares a little bit about their international reputation. So to openly tell the audience that these institutions sometimes help the government to repress activists, it also could be important and could bring a real impact to support student journalism and student activism.
Thank you, Vitaly. And I will, before I give further to Mstislav, I just wanted to one more say that, I mean, Nicholas says that he is at the university in Moscow, which also means that he probably means the student and what he can do within the Moscow to support independent student journalism organizations. So Mstislav now.
Yeah. So I want to stress out the Moscowicity of the nature of Nicholas' situation. I think that the first and foremost things, and one of the simplest things that one should do, is maybe tell his or her students what's happening around university landscape in Russia, and why actually they should care, which is another big question. And I think this the answer to this question comes up to the human being, and it would be different to one another. And so I wouldn't be suggesting any of this, but still, like, even informing students about such things, and maybe not putting, tests and exams on the day of massive protests, such as many of our units unfortunately do out of the blue. That would help. So yeah, and the second thing is maybe, for example, maybe putting of course what I'm about to suggest is quite dependent on the nature of subject that the teacher is teaching. But still, as I'm a political science student, maybe we had some kind of cases to discuss and to apply social theories of the past to, and these situations that we were working with were quite, they were quite relevant, and they happened around a month or maybe days before the task was sent to us. So maybe implementing such things, and that would require critical thinking, and that would require research from the students, would be also of immense assist to student journalism and student activism in Russia. And last thing, because like the international reputation was mentioned by Vitaly, this is also a part of my concern, because a year ago I was at academic mobility at the University of Edinburgh, and so it happens that on this year, the QS subject rating for politics rated my home university, High School of Economics in Politics, higher than the University of Edinburgh. The gap wasn't really big. It was HC was about 43 and Edinburgh was 48, but still, regarding the political firings that happened half a year before the rating was published, that seemed a bit a bit ambiguous and confusing to me. So international reputation is really a big thing for our universities, and it's a subject to brag about for our Ministry of Education and for the leaders of our universities. And if we try to somehow affect this by the influence that the professors or the teachers have, not just international community, but on domestic as well, I think this would also could be of help.
Thank you, Mstislav. And now, Dmitry and Marina, do you want to add? it also, yeah, please, Marina.
Yeah, I didn't quite understand if you are a professor of journalism or no, but maybe maybe we should talk to students about that we could do, like we are able to do it, like to do a good journalism, to launch to launch a magazine, because we had a problem. I had a problem that I was like I didn't have the feeling that I am able maybe tell these people a little bit more because I think students are creative power and they could do a lot of things, but they have some fears, maybe it, and yes, the great instructions on how to be a great teacher. I don't know how, but Mstislav was really informative on this topic. Just to be a great professor is already a thing, because I didn't have a lot of like great ones, honestly, and it helped me when I actually had the professor that talked to me and was really into her field. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Marina. And Dmitry, do you want to finish this round?
Is it a question about how to help student journalism?
Or you can add also the journalism and student activism in this case.
Student journalism isn't my field. So how can professors or other people help? I think don't interfere. And let activist groups do what they can.
Thank you. So we have one final question, which is from Rory Hanna, which is exactly concerned with the question of the future of the activism. So that Vidal already mentioned that students in Russia seem to be more politicized compared to a few years ago. And what do the speakers think might happen to student activism and critical journalism in the next few years? Are you optimistic or more pessimistic? And maybe I would add here, especially this long-term perspective. I mean, not what will happen until the election, which happens in 3 months, but exactly maybe after the election, because until the election there is it's a no time really. So who wants to start with the prognosis for the future?
Start.
Okay,
I
please.
would say I'm moderately optimistic about the future. At the moment, sure, all the people who are activists in Russia are a little bit paralyzed by the hurricane of repressions, which Russian people has at the moment before the election. But if we will have a look on a wider trend in time, if we will compare the situation now with the situation 10 years ago or 20 years ago, I think we see a lot of progress, because at the moment we have at least some independent student organizations, and before we have nothing like that. And it seems that the social situation, which was the main reason of political passivity, of not activity of students in 10 years ago or 20 years ago, passed away, and the social lifts more or less destroyed, and active people need to go outside of Russia or try to change something within, and it bring, I think, a new dynamic, and a lot of people start to understand that something should be changed slowly. But I think the main problem here is that the Russian society and students and students too are quite atomized, not organized properly at the moment. So I think it's a question of time. Then the new organization will appear and something more general will change. It will take, I think, a lot of time, but the situation will change, I suppose, at least from my perspective.
Thank you, Vitaly. Who wants to go next?
I could.
Sure.
I think well, considering the experience of the past few months, there is hardly any optimistic things that we could say about students' activism and critical journalism in Russia. As of right now, like the best critical journalism outlets are forced out of the business by the state government because for several reasons. Some of them are raided, some of them are losing their income because they are announced as foreign agents, and they're losing their income because the businesses don't want to associate themselves with the foreign agents. But it is also hard to predict what's to happen after the Duma elections. Maybe these things, maybe this oppression wave is just the preparation for the Duma, for the parliamentary elections, and after it, it would just, go back to ottipel, to Khrushchev kind of forming of the internal affairs, as it is called in Russian. It's just really tough to predict right now because we haven't witnessed this level of oppression in the history of contemporary Russia, to my perspective. So I think we should just see what is to happen after the September elections, and then we could try to predict what is going to be the strategy of the government after, till it, till the regime falls. And yeah, so this is pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Mstislav. Dmitry, Marina.
Yeah, I couldn't say what will happen in this autumn or so, but I believe that we have the generation shift, and it's inevitable. So in power will be young people will be in power. Maybe you can slow down this process, but it's impossible to stop it. So the time will change. So not a really practical answer, but it's a thing that helps me live and do my job, because if it's all for nothing, why we should do anything? So I think answering these questions, yes, I'm optimistic. But in real great scale, maybe 10 years, maybe 20, I have no idea.
Thank you. And Dmitry, your assessment of the future?
Yeah, I'm actually kind of optimistic on the future of gender and sexuality education. of course, if we haven't some organizations inside university, it's not a big problem, because for now in Russia we have a lot of NGOs and a lot of people who write about sexuality. And doing my research, I also see optimistic trends on acceptance of homosexuality, for example. And we see how younger generation is better and better in other fields of our different areas which we discussed today. But of course, there are some problems. I think it's polarization between different groups. Just for example, I see the trend. About justification of homosexuality and openness with these topics. But for example, this year, two of my students wrote for administration. How it's called in HPS red button. So it's where you can write your complaints to the teacher. So, and they complained that I propagandize homosexuality, and actually I discussed very briefly one of the book by Francesca Stella. So about it's about research design and how to do qualitative studies. So I think that this polarization could lead us to conflicts in the student community. So and if this community can be homogeneous, it somehow will lead to very pessimistic results.
Thank you, Dmitry. And at the very moment in which I was saying that it will be a last question, there Mohammed Ragimov raised a hand, so I will invite him to ask his question, which will be now the last question in our round. So Mohammed, please, you can turn on your camera and voice.
Yeah.
Now.
So hi there. My camera doesn't work for some weird reason, so I apologize for that. I hope it's okay. So thank you very much for this discussion. It felt very reassuring to see that student activity is still going, so to say, and that it seems to be on the rise. I mean, hopefully, right? So I have a question regarding the narrative of the HPS turning from quote unquote the most liberal university in Russia to the quote unquote pretty average one, freedoms and liberties wise. So a couple of weeks ago, Yaroslav Kuzminov, HPS rector, said that the university maintains and is going to maintain its university out of politics agenda, and recalled the difference between politics and policy, suggesting that, well, HPS supports discussions around Russian policies, but wants to keep the university out of politics. So in light of this, so to say, anti-politics rhetoric of the HPS and actually other universities as well, and increasingly the Russian state as well, how this rhetoric radicalizes, in some sense, the student groups such as DOXA or any other group. So this is a question not only to the HPS representatives here, and many others, and makes them, by them, I mean student groups, really get into the politics that Kremlin fears to have the students involved. So that would be my question.
Yeah, I could answer, I think, as the representative of DOXA. Yeah, so I think this switch to a university without politics agenda was the main topic of 2019, and we've at the time we've seen this quite remarkable time, and like the most interesting time maybe to be alive and to be a student in high school of economics. And how wrong could we be at the time, because 2020 brought us even more fun and clutter. So yeah, at the time, one of the prorectors of the university, Mrs. Ulrika Samara, she she announced her participation in the Moscow State Duma elections, but then also arguing that it's not politics. Well, it's not politics because I want to represent my university, and at the time, the incumbent was Mr. Yaroslav Kuzminov, director of HPS.CESEE. So Valery Samara was to be his successor. Didn't turn out to be true, fortunately or unfortunately. But then also she gave an interview to Ryazar, and where she announced that she's a part of Mr. Sabanin's team. Mr. Sabanin being the mayor of Moscow, one of the major allies of the regime and ally of Mr. President Vladimir Putin, namely. So yeah, and at the time we could see some really nice hypocrisy moments going on when, for example, the opposition politician Mr. Maxim Katz wasn't allowed to have a public speech and to have an event inside the uni, while Mr. Vladimir Zhirinovsky, the leader of systemic opposition party LDPR, was allowed to do that, while also he was encouraged to share his merchandise, which is actually a political agenda and a political campaign, namely. But yeah, standards are different for different groups inside the uni. Yeah, so in 2020 was a bit different in this regard, but yeah, regarding the another part of your question, how these gray zone moments affect our motivations and motivations of students and activists to participate in politics. I don't know. Actually, I don't. I know that several students inside HC and other universities participated in municipal elections back in 2017, and they're planning to do that again next year. Also, like Igor Zhukov, which you might have heard about, he was participating in 2019's Moscow City Duma elections as well. So in this regards, I think they have focused much of attention on, like Ms. Samara has focused a lot of attention on herself and on the elections themselves back 2 years ago. But I think as of right now, this political thing in high school of economics, it remains active, mainly regarding the firings, of professors and teachers who, in one way or another, associated themselves with the protest. Not maybe just supporting it; they wouldn't be supporting it publicly, but they might try to study it neutrally and academically, and might get fired for it. So I think right now this even this phrase, the university without politics, it has been forgotten for science, because I think most of the students they just know, they just understand what's going on, and no one really cares, and no one really asks the question, because they just do know what the answer would be. So after Hans Government Economics expelled every media organization back in 2019, since then, I think with just the consensus, I think was that well, okay, we got you, and now we know what you're going to do next. So that was high school economics recently. One of the I think best universities in Russia to be associated with and to be proudly called like I'm a student of this uni, which it still is, but it's
okay. Thank you. Dmitry, Vitaly, Marina, do you want to add on University of Political?
I can add a couple of words. For example, in Moscow State University, the rector, Viktor Sadovnichiy, proudly tell that the university is out of politics, but at the same time, he is the member of United Russia ruling party and kind of доверенное лицо of a person who is connected with President Vladimir Putin during his presidential campaign. So it's kind of a hypocrisy in it could not be named another than hypocrisy, I suppose. So I think this is it's obvious that the university is part of the wider political and social context, and the university could not be out of politics because the university is a place where politology is studied. Is a very obvious example of it. So there is no way to study and learn politology without politics, and the structure of power within the university are part of structures of power in society as a whole. So, but unfortunately, this opinion is not widely shared by the people of university, and still, even now in 2021, a lot of people prefer to distance themselves from and their role in the academy from wider political situation. But I think these illustrations that university do nothing to protect their students against the repressions, that university administration is part of United Russia and the regime is a very good example that it's not true that the university is out of politics, and it's slowly becoming more obvious for students and lecturers.
Thank you, Vitaly. And Dmitry, you wanted to add?
So High School of Economics, not only university, this is huge research center, which prepare a lot of researchers for the government. So of course, administration is somehow afraid of politics in terms of opposition politics, because they could because government could stop ask the university to provide some researchers, and they lose money. From the point of rector, of course, you can be fired or you can end your life in jail. It's not a problem in Russia to put the person there. So based on these fears, some psychological fears, and because of age, of course, these people playing the part in the regime spectacle about loyalty and support. So and somehow they are trying to say that they are against politics in terms of opposition. And I think that in in their minds, the politics, when you work with authorities, it is not real politics, it's like governance, for example. So answering the question about Университет вне политики, so it's about fears, and we can deal with it.
Okay, thank you, Dmitry. And Marina, do you want to add something about the university out of politics from the perspective of Kazan University?
Yeah, actually, our rector is the member of United Russia, and 4, I think, rectors of main universities in Kazan are also the members of United Russia. What a coincidence. But they didn't claim that university is out of politics, because we don't really have the wide discussion on politics among students compared to Moscow, where lots of organizations, student unions exist, but we don't have this. So yeah, I think that's all.
Right, thank you, Marina. I myself have more questions now than I had before, and I think that we could continue this discussion for several more hours, and hopefully at some point of time we will. Maybe even when it will be possible, we can do it in person. When the discussions can, they don't stop when the organizer says it's gone, but they can continue with cold drinks until the sun goes up or down, depending on. And I'm thanking everyone from my side. And I really got a very many new ideas and questions to my own research, which also in a way is concerned with the transformation of the universities, of the transformations of the academia after 1990s. And I think also the colleagues who are at the Research Center, which is concerned with the transformation after 90s in Central and Eastern Europe, also got a lot of ideas, exactly, for example, about how the terms are changing or not changing, and also how the generations are working, also from the point of view of you who are now the generation which is entering a situation in which the terms are very solidified. And I think for me, it's evident that the terms which we were using today and the terms which you were using are also very different than the administration is using, or maybe not very different, but in part different. And also how some professors are seeing and using these terms. And I think this is exactly one of the more theoretical discussions which can lead them to more research and more discussions, but also practical results in the ways how to deal with conceptual transformations in post-Soviet states. So for me, it would be all. And now I'm giving it back to Vienna, to Friedrich, and to Dietlind, whom I would ask to make final comments or just say thank you. So please, I'm giving it back to you now.
Giving back to Vienna, and this is like in the TV in early times, and I'm giving back to Berlin. But yeah, thank you. I want from my side, I want to thank you very much for this very lively discussion and this very interesting and different perspectives, which I liked most, is to learn about these different initiatives and different activities, which discussed our questions from more or less different activities, in the sense of that some are journalists, some are in the civic civil society and in these connections between these different approaches to student activities, which therefore I agree to Jan, I learned very much. Thank you very much. And I wish you a nice evening. I hope the weather is fine or where you are, wherever you are.
And now we basically don't know who is the person who will close the conference. So I will basically do it. So thank you once more. Thank you, everyone. And see you around either on Zoom or on other media or in live. So have a great evening and see you soon. Goodbye.
Thanks a lot for organizing.
Thanks.
Thank you all and goodbye. All best to you.
Goodbye.